Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux. It's Florida Derby Saturday. It is the signature day of the entire Gulfstream Championship meeting. We're going to start off with race number 3 at Gulfstream Park. Some nice 3-year-olds on the grass. Let's take a look at the field for the Cutler Bay Stakes, going a 2-turn, 7.5 furlongs. A nice betting race. We're going to learn a lot more, Ashley, about the number 8 Set, who is a very impressive debut winner and now hikes right up into a stake.
Yeah, very, very impressive. One with ease, got a really flashy figure for that effort. And I think when you look outside of him, Dan, a lot of horses are going to be either switching surfaces or stretching out in distance, cutting back, and a lot of them don't have the experience at the 7.5 furlong distance, which at Gulfstream Park is 2 turns, which will set up for some horses. But some horses are, kind of accustomed going to a mile or a mile and a 16th. So this is a different ball game.
Truly is a fascinating handicapping puzzle. We'll start off with trying to decipher the pace. Here's our Timeform US pace projector. We're expecting some quick splits. There are some stretch out sprinters in this race, including the number 1 King Julian, and I think Jose Ortiz is going to be very aggressive with this horse. I expect him to be close to the pace, but Set showed speed in his debut. He'll be up close as well. If he has to rate, however, now that adds even a new dimension, up in class, and now maybe having to sit off another horse or two.
Yeah, it'll be very curious to see what Set does. But I agree with King Julian here. I mean, based on the draw and especially the race last time out, how fast that opening half went, 43-1, sprinting on the turf. I think you're right. I think Jose basically has one sort of option, and that is to go with him. Salvator Prince, has been some forward, I should say relatively forward, say 2 starts back in a race that was pretty quick on the Tapeta. I think a couple of others might splash a little bit of early foot too. So it could set up for some horses that maybe sit the trip just off of it.
And a horse that would benefit from a blazing fast pace is coming out for the Brittany Russell barn. That's the number 7 Massive. Note the LP flag over his chiclet. That indicates he has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. We'll start things off with the expected speed. The number 1 King Julian, 0 for 2 on turf. Only win thus far has come on a synthetic surface, and now he's going to try 2 turns for the first time. So he has to pass the distance test. He has to worry about the potential of a very fast pace, and he might be better on the all-weather.
Yeah, like a little bit of a question is the turf, just mentioning his turf performances. They're lackluster. And actually in both of them, he sort of, tossed in the towel late in both of them. And I have a concern then stretching out to 7.5. Now, if he were to go to the front and maybe gets leisurely fractions, that's one thing. But he's coming out of races where he's been pretty aggressive, especially that effort 2 back. So I don't know if I see the 7.5 furlong distance, benefiting him here.
These are very strong connections, and you're likely going to get a price. One of the horses he was winning against last time returned to place in a synthetic one other than allowance with a 76 buyer. Salvator Prince is the number 2, and this is a horse that's going to be trying turf for the first time. A couple of good synthetic efforts leading up to this race. The second dam was graded stakes placed on turf, so I think there's enough pedigree here.
I think the pedigree is there. He's going to cut back a little bit in distance, but I tell you, those races 2 and 3 back were very impressive, especially facing winners for the first time in terms of the figure. He significantly improved, went from that 68 to an 85. And for him, it's been about sitting the trip, whether they've gone 47 and so, 47-1 to the half, or 45. He's been able to get a really nice trip close to it, close enough to make that late run. And I think going 7.5, where others are either stretching out or cutting back and they need more ground, it looks like, I think he kind of sits perfectly in here and might get the right setup that he needs.
He'll reunite with Arad Ortiz, who was aboard for the win 2 starts back, and this guy took on a pretty nice synthetic horse in his most recent race. Epic Run would come back from that win to run second in the Battaglia at Turfway with an 87 buyer. Private Thoughts is the number 3. He's coming out of a good performance in a synthetic race, albeit a race restricted to Florida breds. This is going 2 turns. He was entered for the $50,000 claiming option. I thought all in all he's had a good trip off a moderate pace. He has the lead, and he's going to get run down.
I thought this was a good performance, and Roundspats does well with the horses that he's, has in his barn, and once in a while gets a really nice one. And I think Private Thoughts, the question will be for him, the turf. He's got that 1 turf effort under his belt, but it was sprinting. So with a horse like him who has 2 efforts since then that I think are at least decent enough, I don't want to hold the 1 turf effort against him. And to me, looking at his running style, I do think a cutback in distance should help his chances.
Tok Tok, the number 4, I think has some excuses after winning his first 2 races. They ran him in the Bourbon at Keeneland. He threw a fit, and the preliminaries dumped the rider behind the gate, then fell far behind and came with a kick. He was probably overmatched in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but he was still over and behind horses in the stretch and didn't get the clearest run, and he lost all chance last time out of the Columbia when stumbling very badly at the start and then pulling in between horses and in tight going into the first turn.
Yeah, everything went wrong last time out in the Columbia, and regardless, he might have needed a race, right? He did have a little bit of a time off after that, so expect him under a cleaner trip, second off the layoff, to really take a step forward. And you talked about his stakes races late last year and in the fall, and talking about the Breeders' Cup. The waters are much deeper, and all in all, I don't think he ran that bad. He was closing from off of it. His margins of defeat, they were pretty slim. So knowing Graham Motion and his patience and how he gets these horses ready to roll, I really expect this one to take a big step forward, and you really have to kind of disregard his last out effort.
I'm going to take the number 5, Double Your Money's last race, with a grain of salt as well. They cut him all the way back to 5/8 of a mile on the synthetic surface, and I think it was too sharp for him, and I also think he's a turf horse. His run around course and distance 2 starts back was a promising effort off of a 2-month layoff. Turf is good for him, and he's got the tactical speed. He can lead if no one else wants it. He can come from off of it if the pace is fast.
I think the pace is going to be fast. So I think he's going to have to kind of take that wait and see approach to see what develops in front of him. But you mentioned, the effort in the Bourbon following that 2 months later. It was an okay effort. I think he can take a step forward. I agree. I'm just going to draw a line through that last race. Sprinting on the Tapeta, I don't think he wants to necessarily go 5/8. And he's had time off since then again. So I'm curious to see how he'll run off the freshening. I think going back to his maiden victory at Kentucky Downs, that can be a tough course, especially at the mile distance. But I think he has promise. I think he has potential in here. I'm curious to see what his price will be.
True Xfactor is the number 6, Ari's Magic, who was a debut winner at Tampa Bay Downs and then faced Florida Derby-bound Real Macho in a first-level allowance race on dirt at Gulfstream. He's going to switch surfaces here. Good Magic's an acceptable turf sire. The dam has thrown one turf winner from one runner to try the surface. Not a ton of black-type turf horses in this female family, but you have to respect anything Christophe Clement does, especially switching surfaces.
Absolutely. And I think just first time turf runners, he's got a really nice stat for that outfit. And, I thought the debut was very impressive, and I would have liked to see more, though, second time out. That's a little bit of a dull effort. I understand this horse is going from 6 furlongs at Tampa to the 1 turn, 1 mile at Gulfstream Park. But to me, he really got defeated in there and never did too much. So interesting to see now the tactics say, let's go 7.5, let's go 2 turns, and let's try it on the turf. You talked about Good Magic. Respectable, not enamored necessarily by the stats backing him. So it's a tough call. I think you can go either way here. You think the connections, have faith in them, or you can maybe take a pass approach, just knowing his, last effort wasn't too good.
Massif, the number 7, is a horse that has no early speed. He's completely dependent on the way the race is run and whether he gets a clean trip. I still think there is some potential here, and I think he was given the winner to grow into himself. He was a very big horse when I saw him down at Laurel as a 2-year-old. His last race, while he was beaten as the favorite, he was wired in a slow-paced race by Tokayo, who has won a stake this winter at Gulfstream Park. So Massif was against the race flow and was still charging on for second behind a pretty good horse.
And I thought this was a really nice effort. I mean, he's going to be second best in this field. But, you look at his races, he really only has one poor effort, which came at Colonial. Prior to that, though, he had 2 really nice efforts there in his maiden score. He made things look easy. And I think there's 2 ways to think about this. If the pace is hot, he should be closing. But you also have to think, is he going to be too far off of it early on? Is he going to be, run off his feet at the early stages? I'm not sure. But I do think Edgar Zaya is climbing aboard for the first time. He's going to have to work out a trip. And hopefully, regardless, he can just be a tad closer, kind of, leaving the gate for that first opening, say, quarter mile of the race.
The horse with the fig is the number 8 Set, who earned an 88 Beyer speed figure in this race. A really nice debut try for trainer Mark Cassie. These Oscar performances really seem like they run, obviously on the grass, which is what his surface was. Set got away with very nice fractions in here, sprints on home, and just never gives anyone a chance.
And that's something at Gulfstream Park and just in general. I mean, if you get a horse that can kind of open up a lead and make a sizable lead with steady fractions like he was able to do, they can really take them a gate to wire. And you talked about the figure. It is eye-catching. It's an 88. Now he is going to face winners for the first time, and it's a big test in terms of what he's going to face. But I still think what we saw on debut was something that was kind of special for a first asking effort. So like that was on February 24th, good spacing in between his races, and they're just going to go for it here. So to me, there's a lot to like, and I just like that he's got that effort going 7.5 locally at Gulfstream Park. So many in this field do not.
While the number 9 Old Flag is going to be a big price in this race because he is stepping way up in class, it is worth noting that his only lifetime win came in his only prior race on the turf, and he came from off the pace to win, and that was a pretty fast pace. They ran him back on the synth last time out. He didn't get those sort of fractions, and he was only able to muster up an even performance. Getting back to the grass helps, but I am worried that this company might be too tough for him at this point in his career.
I agree with you. I think the surface change should help his chances, but it's a tall task. He broke his maiden for 35,000. He did it pretty easy. You mentioned he came from off the pace, and he did not get that setup last time out. Even when you go to kind of compare those efforts, say March 7th and February 4th, I know they're different days, but he did not get any pace help last time out. If he maybe, got the pace help, could he maybe been in the money? Sure, but that's kind of a what if sort of circumstance, and I agree. I think this is probably a little bit too much too soon.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Cutler Bay Stakes on Florida Derby Saturday. You're going with double your money. Proven performer on turf. Getting back to 2 turns on turf is what I think he wants. Versatile running style. I think you're getting a fair price.
I hope I get a fair price. I think that's what's going to come down to in this field, because I thought a couple of horses really looked like they could win it. I went with him for the main reason being he's pace adaptable. I think he could be forward in here or just off of it. I don't want to be too far off, knowing there's some deep closers in here. And to me, it's going to come down to trip form. I like that Javier is climbing aboard for Brian Lynch, and the freshening. I thought the freshening was an interesting angle. With that said, the one concern I would have against him is that one win came at Kentucky Downs. And as we've learned, there are some horses that love it there and really can't take that elsewhere, but I think he can.
Tok Tok's going to be my top pick in here. He just had no chance last time out when he stumbled terribly at the start. I like the fact that he's won sprinting. I like the fact that he's won going long. Maybe 7.5 will hit him right between the eyes, and he goes out for a master horseman in Graham Motion and should get a nice pace to attack as well. 4856 for me, 5842 for Ashley in the Cutler Bay on Florida Derby Saturday at Gulfstream. Best of luck.